I'm Ashton Addison from the Crypto Coin Show, and today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Sunny Aggarwal, co-founder of Osmosis Labs. Sunny, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Heard a lot of great things.
You're very welcome. I've heard a lot of great things, and I've experienced a lot of great things with Osmosis. I've used the platform myself. I love it, and I'm excited to dive into the latest updates with you and your team. I know there's some big announcements that have just been made. And I want to also just dive into general DeFi, where we're at, where you see it going. I know you're deep into the space, but I would love to start our conversation off with maybe just hearing a little bit about yourself, what got you so passionate about DeFi, and then we'll dive into the osmosis part of it.
Yeah, sure. So I've been, in crypto since like 2015. Originally got into it from I was studying computer science and political economy. And so I was like, wow, this is a cool way of using computer science to do political economic stuff. So that's how I got into it originally. And I actually kind of got very into a lot of the tech side. I got really passionate about proof of stake, and that's actually how I started getting involved with Cosmos. Because back in 2017, when I dropped out of college to work on I wanted to go full time into crypto, and at the time I was just looking at everyone was a lot of people were working on proof of stake, but no one had really had it live yet. But I looked at all the options and I was like, wow, Cosmos seems to be the most simple way of doing proof of stake actually. And I was like, wow, we can execute this really fast. And so that's kind of why I reached out to the Cosmos team, and they got really interested in the larger Cosmos vision of what they were doing. Particularly because, before Cosmos, I was interning at Consensus, the Ethereum dev shop, and that's where I actually got interested in DeFi, my first foray into understanding DeFi and smart contracts and everything. It was interesting, but I was always just I was still am a little bit of a Bitcoin maxi, and I was like, all this stuff is so cool, but what is this ETH shitcoin? I thought we're doing this with Bitcoin. And so that's right. Part of what Cosmos got me excited about was we can build an app layer for Bitcoin. So that was one. But then also I was just more interested in that lower level infrastructure layer, working on proof of stake and stuff, while Consensus was more focused on building applications. So I worked at Cosmos for 2 years, two or 3 years, and helped build that core stack where we, built the Cosmos SDK, built Tendermint Consensus, built IBC. And then, the company kind of fell apart for a bunch of reasons, just internal stuff. But we all were still wanting to work on Cosmos. And so we were trying to figure out what is it that we want to do in Cosmos. What's the next product we want to do? So I think Osmosis kind of happened from two angles. One, for me, what got me excited about DeFi was the SushiSwap vampire attack, because that was the moment where I that was whoa, that was weird, and that's something that you can only do in DeFi. That idea that that's what really made me click of oh my god, Uniswap had those LP tokens, but no one was really doing anything with them at the time. But when SushiSwap made this thing where you can take the LP shares, put it in their thing, earn with it, and then they did the vampire attack, I was like, whoa. That's when it clicked, where it's whoa, we tokenized the concept of liquidity, and that's really cool. And what can you do with that? And so that's what finally got my gears turning of I went a little bit of I really focused at the infrastructure layer. But oh, DeFi is actually pretty cool and interesting too. But so then we were what do we want to do with DeFi? Me and my co-founders, our skill set, I think, is still heavily at the infrastructure layer. And so what we were well, what can we do? What can we bring to the DeFi layer, but with our skill set? And we were okay, when we got into the space, there was 3 big things that were I think we wanted to solve and work on, right? There was scalability, proof of stake, and privacy. And so proof of stake, I think we actually check mark. We did it. Like over half of crypto market cap is running on proof of stake at this point. Like a lot of the, Ethereum stuff is like inspired heavily by the work we did at Cosmos. So great job, well done. Scalability, it's it's making progress, right? There's enough people working on it, and it's like, it's an engineering effort at this point. It's like it's gonna happen. Privacy was the thing where like that's like, I don't know, no one's really started to like crack that in the way that we were expecting, right? And so that's why we kind of like focus on like, okay, how do we build a DeFi ecosystem that's really like has privacy primitives at its core? So that at the end of the day, I think that's what motivates me to work on DeFi is like, how can we build? I like if you ask like, all my crypto skeptic friends when they ask me like, oh, what's the point of this? Like, why do we need this DeFi stuff? And I think, you can pitch them on all these different things. The thing that I think that really clicks for them is the privacy side of things. And so that's kind of what motivates me heavily.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Sunny. And with the privacy is also on the decentralized side, having control of your funds or not giving them to the centralized exchange, and who knows what they're doing with them, whether they're trading them or losing them. So I do appreciate that side of it, in that you get to hold your own funds. I'm curious on those 3 pillars that you mentioned. When I think about Cosmos, I always think about the IBC, which is the inter blockchain communication protocol, which is the interoperability pillar as well. I'm curious if there's an importance on that in, the overall, outside of the Cosmos ecosystem, a lot of DeFi, I think there's a lot of still fragmentation between different blockchains, and hopefully Cosmos will have a play in this, but it should be merging towards a more holistic ecosystem so that there's better liquidity and, not so much fragmentation, and overall all of DeFi should work better.
Yeah. So I think interoperability is like a very complex thing. Like what does that mean? IBC definitely makes it easy for people to like move assets between the chains that support IBC. But there's still a lot of other things that need to be solved in order to support, like, for something to feel interoperable, right? Like 2 different chains like can support IBC, but if you have to have a different wallet and a completely different UX to like interact with them, is that really like interoperability, right? And so what we need to do is like, so one of the things that we are working on with Osmosis is like, we're hoping to make it be this like account hub for your like actions. Like one of the big projects we're working on is like a lot of focus on account abstraction and making it so that like you can, we want to make it as easy for a normal user to like a normie basically to onboard into Osmosis. Like no more of this like downloading a wallet, saving 24 words, all this stuff, right? Like make it as easy to like log into, like sign up for Osmosis as it is for any Web2 app. But that's not gonna like solve interoperability, because now if you want to touch Uniswap or touch an app somewhere else, you still have to go download the wallet. So we're trying to figure out how do we make the interchain account hub, make accounts on Osmosis, but then use IBC to like execute transactions and actions on every chain. So you can like, and I think that's really where interoperability, or where we're thinking about interoperability right now, is like, the UXs have to be seamless as well.
No, that's a great point. And you sort of want like a DeFi hub where you don't have to have all these extra arms and an extra wallet over there and then have the bridge over to it. And I saw some news recently with regards to Osmosis, in that they are building a DeFi hub by merging in with Umee. I'm not sure if that ties in exactly, but maybe you can talk about that merger and what does that mean with these 2 projects merging together, and what exactly is involved in the DeFi hub?
Yeah, so right now the merger is like a chain merger. The tokens are still going to remain separate for now. Like there's still going to be communities are going to, in the future, there might be more overlap. They might do a large token swap or a token merge completely, but that's, up to the governances. For now, it's, Osmosis is the leading DEX chain on in Cosmos, and Umee is the leading lending app chain in Cosmos. And so the idea was like, okay, these 2 things are going to work really well together because, if you want to do any sort of like leverage trading or something like that, you need the lending to be next to the DEX. And so that's why, we said, okay, let's take the code, instead of having these be two different code bases or chains, let's move Umee onto the Osmosis chain basically. And now you can have the lending, this deeper lending protocol sitting right next to the DEX, and, it'll provide things like margin capabilities, flash loans for the DEX, like all these like functionalities. And so the idea with like Osmosis is like the chain is trying to provide a similar experience to a centralized exchange, similar to, like I mentioned on the onboarding side. But the other thing is like when you go to a centralized exchange, like go to Binance, like yes, they have spot trading, but they also have a lot of other functionalities as well, right? They have margin trading, right? They have perps, they have a launch pad, they have all these things. And so that's why it's like we need to work and partner with like good projects to like provide this cohesive set of experiences, but in a unified like user experience. So that's kind of like, working very closely with Mars on that margin trading side, then Umee on the margin trading side, and then Levana on the perps, and StreamSwap on the launchpad. So we're building this like cohesive ecosystem. But like the goal here is to be more tightly integrated than you would normally see from like more generalized ecosystems.
Definitely. And I think that is a great advancement forward in DeFi overall. Just like if you go to Binance, it's like the tabs are all lined up there in which kind of trading you want to do. You need to make a DeFi hub to make it just as easy, if not easier. Otherwise, people aren't going to move over to decentralized trading because there's extra clicks or, it's extra steps. So that's great to hear. And is that something that's being done immediately, or are we going to see that in Q1? What's sort of the timeline on that?
Yeah, it's going to be slowly rolled out. Umee is working on their migration right now. Levana is there live on our front end now. So yeah, it's going to be like a rollout gradual process. We like to like ship small things quickly rather than do these like giant, like one-time big updates. So
yeah, very cool. And being the sort of the leading spot for decentralized exchanges in the Cosmos ecosystem, what do you think attributes to the continued growth of the Osmosis DEX? Is it the user experience and the seamlessness, or is it just the size of the Cosmos ecosystem right now? Is there anything specifically that contributed to the success so far?
Thus far, I think the user experience is a big one, right? I think we have a very like seamless user experience that's like better than a lot of crypto like DEXs out there. And another one is like access to unique assets, right? Like I think there's a big like a lot of people. Binance grew so quickly because it was often like the first exchange to list a lot of assets, and they like blitzed that really well. And so, with Osmosis, we are the biggest DEX for Atom, which is a top 30 coin. We were once upon the time the biggest DEX for two top 10 coins, namely Luna and UST. But obviously that's not a market we really have that much support in anymore. But now with TIA, Celestia, people have probably been tracking the meteoric rise of TIA over the last couple of weeks. And so Osmosis is also the biggest DEX for TIA as well. And then the new DYDX token, where DYDX has switched to a Cosmos chain. And I think it's one of the most, largest products in all of crypto, right? Like highest DEX volume of any DEX at all. And so, their token has, the new version of the token, the Cosmos version has the most, we're the main DEX for that by volume as well. So, giving the access to, so what's nice about Osmosis here is like by being the biggest DEX in Cosmos, as Cosmos grows, we also get access to we're the first place where people come for these like new types of assets.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's good to be paying attention to the latest advancements. And if there's something great that's coming out, like Celestia, getting it involved on day one I know there was an airdrop for that, and a lot of people got their tokens for free. But since then, those tokens have even risen 500+%, and they're still at the very beginning. But sort of getting involved as the main spot at the beginning, I feel like is very important. So that's great to know. And I'm curious on your insights into DeFi as a whole over the past few years. Obviously, you've been pretty deep in it for the past few years as Osmosis has been grown out. But if you look at where DeFi was in the craziness of it all, when there was a lot of speculation, Bitcoin was at all-time highs, and DeFi was at all-time highs at the same time in 2021, I think it was around 180 billion that was value locked in there. And right now we're sitting at about, less than a third of that. But at the same time, I feel like the fundamentals of DeFi have grown a lot. Maybe you can talk about the differences in the fundamentals and the growth of the sector and what you've seen since the last 3 years. And do you think, it's undervalued in terms of the value locked in right now, or where do you see it exactly at?
How has DeFi changed? That's a good question. I think we are starting to, see more new primitives start to show up, right? Like I feel like in the last I feel like the bear market is when usually new primitives get invented, and so last bull market, you had Compound and Aave end up as the biggest lending protocols, and it felt like this big duopoly almost. But then now you see something like Morpho coming along, and it's oh, here's a new, fundamentally new primitive of how to do lending, and it's really shaking up the space, right? Or you see, obviously a huge shift towards perps in general. You see new perps dexes launching and getting a lot of traction with Vertex, Hyperliquid. Osmosis is working on our own perps as well. And so, I think people realize that perps are the killer product of crypto right now. And so you see I think we're going to see more and more of the perp volumes moving away from centralized exchanges onto decentralized exchanges as well. My biggest thing, if I wanted to bet what I'm excited for going forward, is an engagement of Bitcoin into DeFi. I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm still, to this day, still a bit of a Bitcoin maxi, and I think, I started working on Cosmos in order to build the app layer for Bitcoin, and I think I feel like we're really on the cusp of it right now. I think ever since Ordinals came out, it caused this cultural shift within Bitcoin, and that just Bitcoiners are excited about things again, which is that alone is important and exciting, right? And and I think Cosmos is a big, Cosmos has I would say the second biggest app ecosystem outside of Ethereum, but we don't have that base capital asset to the same size as ETH does, right? And I think we will be able to work with use Bitcoin as that, and you see already the success of that. Thorchain, which is a Cosmos chain, they have a huge success as with their Bitcoin volumes. I think they're doing 2% of global Bitcoin volumes right now, which is pretty impressive for a DEX, right? There's Babylon, which is a project that I'm an advisor for. They're basically building Bitcoin restaking, so similar to EigenLayer, but for Bitcoin. They just announced their raise today. So I just see that also Cosmos project. We're working on actually a Bitcoin bridge as well. So, and so that way we want my hot take is I think by end of 2024, I think Osmosis will be the biggest DEX for Bitcoin. And so, but also with our perps, we want to be able to support native Bitcoin as collateral in our perp system as well. So, I think, we're going to really see a big resurgence of Bitcoin in DeFi. That's my, where I think a lot of things are going.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, Sunny. And I feel like some of the Bitcoin maximalists are sort of torn. I actually looked into Ordinals quite a bit just this week, and I saw just yesterday some tweets from Max Kaiser and some other Bitcoin maximalists that are 100% in full hatred of Ordinals or anything that's just not spot Bitcoin. It seems like you're taking the other position where, hey, there's more utility for this, whether it's NFTs or other layers and things that can provide utility in other ways for Bitcoin. And that
Yep.
overall will help the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think there's these like Bitcoin has like different ideological groups within it, and I think there's definitely a huge. I like to call it. Well, I borrowed the term from my friend Jeremy Rubin, but like the Bitcoin progressives, like the people who don't want Bitcoin to just like stagnate, but like let's do cool stuff with Bitcoin. So yeah, I think the contingent of that is growing in influence and power, and I think we're going to start to see that reflected in like the direction of things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Bitcoin should be used for DeFi. And if you're going to hold Bitcoin and never spend it and it's just going to sit there, then there will never be any transactions. So you got to do something with it.
Yeah.
But when you use Bitcoin for DeFi, there's different ways. You were mentioning about a native Bitcoin, but in the past I've also seen wrapped Bitcoin or like other derivatives of it. Does that decrease the value of Bitcoin in the sense that you're not actually using Bitcoin itself, or does that really not matter?
So I think like Bitcoin is a money asset, right? It does like the amount that my goal of the Bitcoin blockchain is not to, I don't think you need to be doing transactions on it. I think its job is to like mint Bitcoin and secure Bitcoin. And then the BTC, the asset, will flow onto many chains and be the money of like the interchain, right? And so I think it's actually completely okay for Bitcoin, the chain, to not like be where all these transactions are happening.
Okay, that's great to know. And there is quite a bit of Bitcoin news going on right now, and Bitcoin seems to be leading the markets. And there's been quite a rise in Atom and a lot of the other ecosystems, but Bitcoin seems to be outpacing them. Do you have any insights into, next year is a big year for Bitcoin, obviously, with potential ETF approval, the halving, and probably capital inflows from Bitcoin into maybe the Cosmos ecosystem or other ecosystems. Do you have any insights or predictions on sort of what's going to happen in 2024?
Not anything better than what anyone else has. I know. My tip I like to tell people is as soon as people start talking about the flippening is when we're at the peak, and probably get out then, because I don't think the flippening is ever going to happen.
Yeah, it has been hard to outperform it, but at the same time, I feel like more people are there's more awareness to things of value, like the Cosmos ecosystem is driving a lot of value, and I feel like DeFi is pretty low compared to where it was in 2021, and likely it will surpass the TVL that it was, and probably 5x, 10x, like Bitcoin has in the previous cycles. Do you think that will? You think that will happen next year or in the next 5 years, or does it matter?
I think that DeFi will continue to grow. I do think maybe another thing that I think will change with DeFi is eventually it will have to grow beyond crypto. Like right now, we have this like hyper cyclical economy right now where DeFi demand is driven by like demand for cryptocurrencies, which is like it causes this like weird cyclical game happening. But I think eventually you're going to start to see more like, I don't know, normal companies issuing tokens or cash flow that are not like just this like cyclical economy, but like when are we going to get stock markets switching to using blockchain infrastructure, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I'm excited for when that does happen, and that also opens up the market cap to exponentially larger than what we see in even all of crypto is just in a trillion, and we could be looking at quadrillions once we move into perps on DeFi and tokenized stocks and real world assets and everything. So it's very exciting that we're getting in this early. Is there anything else that you want to mention about 2024 in the roadmap for Osmosis, or anything else that you're working on moving into next year?
I think I hit the big three, which was perps, Bitcoin, DeFi, and like smart accounts, which was like that onboarding UX. Those are sort of our three main focuses right now to get towards where we're going.
Amazing. And is there a place that people can go to sort of have real-time updates, or what's the easiest way to follow along besides actually using the Osmosis platform? Is there anywhere else where they can follow along with these updates as you guys roll them out?
Yeah, the best is probably Twitter. So you can follow Osmosis's Twitter account. It's at Osmosis Zone. And then my personal Twitter is at SunnyA97. So you can follow along with either of these accounts, and you'll be up to date on the latest and greatest within Osmosis and Cosmos more widely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sunny. Appreciate the insights into Osmosis and into Bitcoin and overall in DeFi. I'm going to leave the link to the Osmosis DEX and the socials that you mentioned, and the Twitter and your Twitter in the show notes below. Appreciate you taking the time. All the best with everything moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Thank you. Let's see you. Thanks for having me.